but we have some important business to discuss this morning. When you were growing up, were you ever told to eat your vegetables? When you were in math class as a child, did they tell you to show your work? That's because sometimes things are more important than they are obviously exciting or controversial. And in the next number of weeks, we are entering a period that is essential for the future of the Jewish people worldwide and here in Canada. That is because we're entering the time of a World Zionist Congress election. Now, you may wonder, why does that matter to us? What is at stake? At a time like this, it's very essential. Randy, take it slow on the slides. I'll let you know when I'm ready. That the World Zionist Congress takes place every 5 years, and it began at the beginning of the Zionist movement, a time where in that period where democracy and democratic forms have been essential at protecting the life and rights of the Jewish people throughout the world. Now, Zionism to many of us may sound like some kind of movement at distance from us, but in fact, it is something that affects each of us directly, because as we can see, Zionism is not about the kind of politics that we see in the news every day. It is instead about the shared future of the Jewish people throughout the world. And that we as a people, the decisions we make, the things we do, and the way we treat each other and act together has an enormous impact on the future of the Jewish people. So when we say the word Zionism, what we really mean is, what does the future of the Jewish world really look like? And the way in which that's decided in a practical way is when there is, every 5 years, the parliament of the Jewish people, the World Zionist Congress, which creates the structure through which the Jewish people, to some degree in the land of Israel and throughout the world, behave toward one another. Now, when we hear the word Zionist Congress, usually what we think of is this. We think of the early origins of the Zionist movement, where beginning in Switzerland and then moving beyond that for generations before and through the establishment of the State of Israel, there was an organization of people in history books who decided what it is that the structure of the Jewish people should be like. And when the State of Israel was established, that Congress, in many ways, really divided in two. One Congress, the Knesset, the parliament of the State of Israel, and then the World Zionist Congress continued as really the structure that helps define how the Jewish people worldwide will understand each other and ourselves and our future. So today, it's not supposed to look like this anymore. It's supposed to look like that. That last year at the Walk with Israel, which Temple is very proud this year to be the launching point for this year's Walk with Israel, what we saw was what we need in a time like this. What we need is an awareness that Jews always have and always will disagree. The Jews will always have different religious and cultural experiences and viewpoints. But at a time where anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are at their peak in the world, we need to stand together. And the World Zionist Congress historically has been a way in which where we work and we discuss and we fight a bit, with all of us having the shared goal of building the future for all Jewish people. That's what we've done, and that's what we've needed. And here in Canada, we haven't actually taken part in the elections for the World Jewish Congress because having a large but limited Jewish population in Canada, there hasn't been voting because we thought it was more important to find ways to compromise and to work together and to divide up the seats based on who makes up the population of the Jews of Canada in order to represent us and use our resources in right and positive and meaningful ways. Painfully, we live in very divisive times. In times where there are those who are part of the Zionist movement who are focused more on some members of the Jewish community being recognized and others not, some winning and others losing, and that is very problematic for the Jewish people. And so as a result, this intolerance that we see very much and exported from certain factions in the land of Israel has created a time where the Congress of the Jewish people matters more than it has in the past because of conflicts within the Jewish people. And allow me to be very specific. In 2016, in the land of Israel, this display was left outside of the Reform synagogue in Ra'anana in Israel. That is a knife with fake blood, and those are the names of my Reform colleagues and yours who were threatened for living out their vision, pretty much in this room, our vision in general, of what Judaism and the Jewish future should look like. Now, in 2016, when that happened, the Jewish federations of North America condemned what took place. The Israeli government condemned what took place. And then, as tends to happen in our world, everybody went back about their business, assuming that somehow a condemnation might make a difference. Well, if that was 2016, this is what things look like in 2025. That on Erev Yom HaZikaron, the day of Israel Memorial Day, one of the holiest days of the Israel calendar for Israeli Jews, there was an event taking place at that same synagogue in Ra'anana. And instead of extremist cowards in the middle of the night leaving knives outside the synagogue, a mob of hooligans, Jewish hooligans, in this case formerly affiliated with the local part of the Likud party, a centrist right party that is represented by the Prime Minister of Israel, gathered because they had read misinformation about what was happening in the synagogue and believed it was up to them not just to stop a program, but to break into the synagogue and assault the individuals who'd gathered in a Reform synagogue, to participate in the streaming of a program that had happened for 20 years and was happening in Tel Aviv. People in our movement who visited and spoken in this congregation were physically assaulted and had to go to the hospital for treatment. Well, the idea of an assault on a synagogue is scary enough. There has been no statement from Jewish federations. There has been no statement from any leadership nationally in Israel, except for the local leadership in Ra'anana in Israel, who basically said, "You ain't seen nothing yet." This is a proof that in any community, including within the Zionist community, when we ignore extremism, it grows and becomes more dangerous. When we don't speak out, the forces that divide us, instead of bringing us together, grow even stronger. And why is it that these forces that have opposed modern Judaism, modern expressions, the kind of Judaism we live, why is it that they've chosen, and they have, to enter these Zionist elections and to try to move influence away from pluralist Jewish approaches, such as the Reform approach? Well, I'll tell you why. Because in the last number of years, and people in this room have been very directly involved in fighting for these gains that our movement has made over these many years, there have been significant gains for the Reform movement. Yes, we still face some kinds of discrimination religiously by the structures in Israel, but thanks to our engagement in the World Zionist Organization, the Reform factions have grown in these national organizations. That since 2020, $25 million has been funded for the Reform movement and other pluralist efforts in Zionist and Jewish education around the world as a result of these World Zionist elections. That Reform leaders in national institutions in Israel, in the World Zionist Congress and its organs, have defended democracy, transparency, liberal values, because where all this started is that the forms of democracy are what it is that make us strong in the world today. Now, these elections happen every 5 years. We can't wait another 5 years, especially because these kinds of extremist and Haredi, ultra-Orthodox forces continue to grow, and to grow numerically. These are population projections of the Jewish population of Israel. If you look at the yellow line at the top there, that is the general Jewish population of Israel, except for the members of the ultra-Orthodox community. And if you look down at the at the blue line there, that is the projections of the ultra-Orthodox community in Israel. Right now, they represent a minority, if you will, with 6+ million Jews in Israel in roughly the Zionist camp, and another 1.3 million in the ultra-Orthodox camp. We'll look at the projections by later in this century, where those who don't really respect democracy and Zionism, and who, in this case, don't serve in the IDF, will make a growing part of the Israeli population. It's not the goal of the Reform movement to disenfranchise anyone, let alone the ultra-Orthodox. But it is our goal to all work together to strengthen pluralism, to understand that in a time where anti-Semitism has made a massive resurgence and where Jews must stand together, at a time like this, we must stand together. And it's not enough to stand together in our heads. We must use these democratic forms in order to make certain that the Jewish future includes us, the vast majority of the world's Jewish population. And we must, because our movement has made an effort to play along by the rules of these efforts. But it's now been clear in the elections that just took place in the United States that over 10,000 fraudulent votes were cast based on numbers and email addresses and the like for those who registered, that were registered falsely, many of them circling on, although all the details are not in, on a couple of yeshivas in the United States. That we must step forward and do what is possible to avoid resources being channeled away and being put into divisiveness and anger and rejection at a time where what all Jews need to offer each other is understanding, acceptance, and a desire, including our disagreements, to work together for a better, strong future for Israel and Jews worldwide. And we actually have a concrete way for us to do just that. That is, between June 5th and June 15th of this year, we need to vote reform. We need to vote for the number 2 slate, ARZA Canada, who represents the reform movement worldwide, and will see to it that the monies raised, whether through UJA or in Israel, that are expended to define the Jewish future, Jewish identity, are done in a way that respect us and respect all Jews. 10 days in June, that's when both registration and voting will take place. Every one of us, and those we know, anyone who identifies as Jewish and is Canadian can vote in this election. You'll be hearing very directly from us about specifically how and in what ways. But this time is a time that really matters. It is our job to get ourselves, all of those in our community that we know who are 18 and above. And during that 10-day period in June, we need to step forward and say the Jewish future needs to be one of mutual respect, of inclusion, not judgment, and of strength and mutual responsibility, not divisiveness and judgment. We can do it, and the single best way to do it is to vote reform, is to vote ARZA Canada in this upcoming World Zionist Congress election. Just trying to show my work a little more than I usually do. It is an important moment for us, and I pray that all of us together can and will make the difference that we must for the benefit of Israel and for each of us in our community. May we step forward and do what is right and what is demanded of us, and may God strengthen us in doing it. Ken Yehi Ratzon.